Welcome back, everyone, to On the Scene. I'm Scripps News correspondent Ava Joy Burnett here in Washington, D.C. The agency tasked with protecting the air we breathe and the water we drink has new leadership at this hour. Zeldin, the one-time New York congressman and gubernatorial candidate, was just confirmed as the next EPA administrator. It is unclear what direction the agency will take over the next few years, given the fact that its authority is rooted in the legal power of the environmental regulations. And the Trump administration has already begun quietly rolling back some of those regulations. 1 week ago, Trump's EPA withdrew a Biden administration plan to limit the number of PFAS in the country's water supply. PFAS, more commonly known as forever chemicals, have been linked to a number of health issues, including cancers. And joining me now to discuss both of these major issues today, from the EPA headlines to these PFAS, we have Razgaitis, a water and sustainability expert and the CEO of FloWater. Raz, thank you so much for being here. I've got to say, I really like your name, by the way. And I want to begin our conversation with, thank you. I want to begin our conversation with your reaction to the confirmation of Zeldin as the next EPA administrator. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, there's a lot of different perspectives from both sides of the table on this. And one of the big concerns as it relates to clean drinking water, clean air is, are we headed in a deregulated zone? And so there's a lot of benefits that as Americans, we all get to experience as a result of economic prosperity. The concern, of course, is as we make economic pathways more viable for businesses, are we doing something that's so degrading to basic fundamental human rights, like clean drinking water, which I think is a really nonpartisan issue, that everybody should have access to clean drinking water that they can trust. We just need to make sure that we're doing the protective measures to ensure that that is a reality and that becomes a reality. And quite unfortunately, today in the United States, that right does not exist. We have a tap water, drinking water crisis in the U.S. for a variety of different reasons. And so these are the things that we're all going to be paying really close attention to as Mr. Zeldin moves into this position.
Yeah, and I want to circle back to the Trump administration's decision to drop those forever chemical limits in place of the Biden administration, what they had before. That happened a full week before Zeldin's confirmation. Do you think that move is setting the stage for what's to come?
Well, it very well may be. And I think there's a couple of things about the EPA and the chemicals that are in the use in the United States today that the PFAS really just serves as a proxy for a number of other issues. And I'll just give you an example of that. Today in the United States in use, there are about 50,000 plus chemicals. According to the Safe Drinking Water Act, there's only about 94 of those many tens of thousands of chemicals that are actually regulated. So having regulation around PFAS, certainly that's an important thing we view, but the reality is having any PFAS in your water is not a good thing. Same thing with lead. There's still no federal mandate. So 50 years later, we've had 5 Republican presidents, 4 Democratic ones. 50 years later, there's still no federal mandate around lead testing. So you can send your kids to school, and it's very conceivable that they may be drinking water with lead in it, and over half of Americans have in the last 5 years. And so I think all of these things really point to consumer advocacy, our responsibility as moms, dads, citizens, administrators in schools, school teachers, reporters, business owners, employees, to take measures into our own hands and not wait for the EPA, not wait for additional regulations. But we live in a world now where we have to take responsibility for those things that we're eating, drinking, and breathing. And water is one of those really important things.
And so I wonder, where do people start with that? Because you mentioned a large number of these PFAS, and people don't know what they are. So as a regular person, how do you find out what these chemicals are? And then what do you do to ensure that you're safe?
Well, one of the things that you could do is go to EWG, Environmental Working Group, EWG.org, and you can type in your zip code, and it'll give you a complete listing in your zip code of what chemical contaminants or other pollutants may be in your tap water. So that's one thing you can do. The other thing you can do is you can assume that you're drinking a chemical cocktail when you drink out of tap water in the United States, because pharmaceuticals, herbicides, pesticides, many years of many chemicals, many years of very aged infrastructure. In the U.S., we've got municipal water treatment plants, which do the best job that they possibly can do, but they're aged infrastructures with aged piping that goes back 30, 40, 50, 60, even 80 years. So what people need to do now today, we live in a world where you have to treat your water twice, which means you really need to filter or purify your water at whatever that drinking source is.
Yeah. So that's the first step. Have just multiple redundancy efforts to purify your water. You mentioned going to the EWG Environmental Working Group to figure out what you should be avoiding. But then, you know, there are issues that so many people don't know about. We saw what happened in Flint, Michigan, Newark, New Jersey with regards to the water and the fact that the water was literally dirty. We know the legal system moves very slowly. What, if anything, are groups like yourself and other nonprofits able to do to quickly challenge if they see that there are shortcomings with regards to the federal government, the EPA, monitoring the safety of water?
Well, I think that's a great question, and I think it goes back to taking initiative and taking action, which is whether it's a hotel, school, business, gym, your own residence. There are things that you can do today using today's technology to solve the problems from the last 30, 40, 50 years while we work to solve infrastructure issues in safe drinking water over the next 10, 20, 30 years. And so an example of that is the very reason that FloWater exists. We actually donated about $50,000 plus worth of FloWater refill stations to Flint, Michigan during the height of the lead crisis. We were plumbing those into water lines that had some testings 34 times the EPA allowable limit for lead. And then once it ran through a FloWater system, there was undetectable lead left. And we did the same thing in deploying FloWater refill stations in all the Oakland schools in Oakland, California. And so we're responsible for our part in restoring tap water and drinking water in the United States today. We're one of a number of companies that are doing that. There's other nonprofits that are advocating for that. I think this all goes back to ultimately taking initiative. So yes, we should advocate for change. Yeah. Yes, of course, we can oppose some things, but we really need to be focusing on solutions as well. And taking initiative today and taking responsibility today does that.
Yeah, I'm so happy that we had you on to talk about this. At least everyone knows that there's a possibility of something that they can personally do to try to help themselves. Rich Razgaitis, water sustainability expert and the CEO of FloWater, thank you so much for joining us today and educating us about this matter.
Ava Joy, thank you. Appreciate you.